Welcome. Today, I'm really excited to be moderating a panel discussion with these fine women sitting here with me. My name is Faith Rothberg, and I'm the CEO of College Recruiter. At College Recruiter, we believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career. Today, we will be talking about women in tech, some of the challenges and some of the success stories that these women have had to encourage other women and men to understand what those challenges and successes are. So what I'd like to do first off is have each person introduce themselves. And I will call on you. This is my way of avoiding trying to pronounce names. So let's start. I'm just going to go around my video. And so let's start with Karina. If you could introduce yourself. Oh, we can't hear you. Oops.
The host.
There we go.
Nice. Thank you. Nice. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karina Kalmanek. I'm currently leading the referral partnership marketing team at Jooble. My previous experiences are in e-learning and ad tech. And I'm really honored to be here to discuss this topic. It's very close to my heart, and I'm excited to hear from all of you powerful ladies.
That's great, Karina. Louise.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Louise Grant. I'm the co-founder of Job Boards Connect. I've worked within the job board industry since '99, so quite a long time, and a few years at JobGate in the aggregation sector, and almost 2 years ago, set up Job Boards Connect, which is a conference to bring the job board community together. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's great, Louise. Thanks. And Natalia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Haponiuk, and I'm Customer Success Executive at Jooble. We are a job aggregator that operates globally, and we've been in the industry for 17 years now. I'm super excited to be here and can't wait to hear everyone's stories.
Great. And Jeanette.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Jeanette Leeds. I'm the Managing Director and Executive Vice President at AMS, which many people know as an RPO service provider. But really why I'm here is because I've really spent my entire career in tech on the HR tech side, first as a practitioner, then on the vendor, and now over at AMS. So excited to share my perspective as a IT and tech and Wall Street and male-dominated area.
That sounds great. The other thing I'd like to do is quickly thank for being a co-host and co-organizer for this event. They have been amazing, the whole Jooble team, in getting this thing up and running, along with Stephen Rothberg, who I'd like to just give a shout out to as well, as he really put this all together, and I just get to be the face of it. So thanks to everybody for that. So with that, let's get started. One of our very first question is to ask each of you to share with our listeners one personal story or challenge. So it could be a success or a challenge that you encountered in your journey to success in the business world. And I think that I will just, I'll just call on you. And so, Louise, if you'd like to start, that'd be great.
I knew you were going to come to me first.
From one senior person to another senior.
Thank you. Well, I thought actually might be interested to share like a really old story, because I've been around since the year dot. And when I started my career in banking, really exciting role. It wasn't, but at this time it was really, really old-fashioned, and it was dominated by bank managers. So the men were the bank managers, and the girls were in the typing pool, and lots of challenges for women in those days. It was a long time ago. It was the late 80s, early 90s. But we were not allowed to wear trousers. This is the thing that I still think about this to this day, that women were not allowed to wear trousers at work. It was just absolutely mad. And so what a delight it is that the world has moved on. And hopefully today, through these conversations, I can share some further experiences. But that's kind of the starting point of my career of some of the challenges that us women face, you know, all those years ago. It's, yeah, hopefully that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. We have come away from that, hopefully. All right, and how about you, Jeanette?
Sure. Well, there's obviously we all have so many stories, but building on Louise's story, I started my career on Wall Street at Lehman Brothers, who's no longer, which is an interesting story in itself. And I first was in campus recruiting as a recruiter, and just building on that piece of people have stereotypes, for better or worse, of, oh, it's the woman in HR, right? You're in recruiting, you're not a banker, and so at the time I was recruiting for investment bankers at MBA schools. And I was like, I want to become the customer. I want to become the candidate for this. So that was part of it, because I knew I wanted to really, climb in my career. But one of the main drivers of me leaving Wall Street for a couple of years to get my MBA was to prove to a lot of the men, like, how do you get that instant credibility? I have my MBA from Columbia Business School, so all the Harvards and or whatever, it's like instant, right? Like, I'm not just whoever in HR, like, I'm smart. I'm just as smart as you guys, right? Like, which is so ridiculous to have, hey, this is a feather in the cap. But that was literally one of the number one drivers, and it served me well in so many other ways. But it's amazing for me to look back 20-something years, 19 years when I got that. So that's my quick story. Lots like that, as I'm sure we all have.
Yeah, that's great. That's like saying the men motivated you to do better in a way, if you think about it. Cool. All right. So, Natalia,
Well,
how about you?
Yes, when I'm thinking about this, besides the topic of today's discussion, I would say that the biggest challenge both in my professional and personal life has been the war in Ukraine. It definitely changed my perspective and worldview and altered some views and priorities. But at the same time, it taught me and many people around the world how to be brave and resilient and united, and also adaptive to new realities. So it's also this challenge that I faced and that taught me something.
That's really unique. It's unfortunate you have to have that experience, but that's really unique. Karina, how about you?
Yes, I hope you can hear me this time.
Yep.
So the biggest challenge I wanted to focus at, and something I'm facing quite a lot within the business world, was gender stereotypes. So one of the stories I wanted to tell comes from my previous experience. I was an account manager in an ad tech company, and I was managing a lot of the key accounts. And there has been a trip that I was going on to a conference that I remember. I was for some reason arriving the next day after everyone else. And for some reason, when we were organizing to see our key accounts, my superior at the time has decided to schedule a meeting with my partner, with my key account, without me, to take them to a football game. And then when I questioned it, he said, football is not a girl's thing. And at the time, I decided not to question, just to move on from it. But as I was packing for the conference, I got a message from my partner, who asked me, where are you? The game is about to start. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not actually coming today. And they were very, very upset, because for them it wasn't about the game; it was about meeting their account manager, someone they have a very close personal relationship with. So yeah, it really did quite some damage. I ended up running some interference, taking them to dinner the next day. Still, it didn't really fix it fully, but it really did teach me a really big lesson for the life, to just speak up for myself and to just really educate people on the negative effects that might come from this gender stereotype.
Wow, that's huge. Thank you guys for sharing those stories. It's a great place to start as we answer some other questions to talk about how we have dealt with those issues. So the second question is, what skills and qualities have been instrumental in reaching high positions in your industry? So skills and qualities. How about Natalia?
Well, I would say first that, of course, it's definitely important to have expertise in the product and industry that you work with. And also, when I'm asked this question, the Jooble values that we have for recruiting new people always come to my mind. And two of them really, I like the most. And one of them is openness to people, its ability to give feedback, to accept it, to be able to help and empower someone, but also be ready to ask for help. And the second one is the internal locus of control. For me, it's about taking responsibility and accountability for what's happening around you at your workplace as well. And when you have this value, it always adds to your self-efficiency and confidence at workplace.
Excellent. Thanks, Natalia. And Karina, how about you?
Sure. Yeah, I think I have two skills I think are extremely important within the industry. So I would have to say communication, and then Natalia has already mentioned this before, resilience as well. Yeah, in terms of communication, I think just honest, straightforward, transparent communication is essential when you want to grow within the role and to develop. Yeah, within my role right now, it really enables me to rally my team, to have a shared vision, empower them, build trust, and just navigate even any organizational changes we have. And then resilience, I think this one, all of us have experienced quite a lot of prejudice in the tech world. There's a lot of underrepresentation in companies, some societal expectations, gender biases. So it's really easy for your self-confidence to shatter. And a lot of times I experience this kind of imposter syndrome. And yeah, I think it's really important to stay resilient, always try and bounce back from your moments of self-doubt. Just keep on pushing forward, believe in yourself.
Nice, thank you. Jeanette, how about you?
I'm gonna distill this down to one thing. There's obviously so many skills, and one thing that's really served me well is literally ask for things. It's just like in many ways, it's not as simple as that, but it is, because people aren't mind readers, and we think people will know what we need, what we want, where we want to go in our career. And so I remember many years ago on Wall Street, I thought I was up for a promotion. The promotions were done once a year, didn't get it. And it was a title, right? It wasn't like, didn't change the job. And I remember not getting it and literally crying in the bathroom, and then going back and being like, okay, I need to tell people, I need to ask, hey, I want that VP title. And so I took that years later when at my next company I was at, I was literally almost a water cooler conversation, talked to my CEO and said, I want to be on the executive leadership team. And he was like, okay. And it was that simple. We were like, literally, it was a 2-second conversation. But I don't know, would I have gotten on that leadership committee like in a second, right? Like running the companies, like if I didn't just ask for it, I don't know. And so it's simple little things sometimes. Just ask for things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great advice. Okay, Louise, how about you?
It's really interesting listening to everybody else because it's I have a similar answer, but kind of bringing it all together. One of the things that I've learned over the years that has always worked really well for me is being consultative. So we talk about communication, and Natalia and Karina talked about communication and being clear, but making sure that you're doing it in the right way. I don't know anybody who likes to be told what to do, and so I think as a female in any organization, if you communicate with people in a consultative way, you definitely get better results. They feel empowered. They feel like they're having a conversation rather than, we all have things that we have to do in our jobs to get things done. But I think being consultative is a big part of the communication lessons that I've learned over the years. And then to Jeanette's point about asking for things, the way I would sum that up is being brave. Just be brave. So many women, and I've done this, and Karina talked about the imposter syndrome. We criticize ourselves, and we're afraid to ask for something or put ourselves forward for something. Sometimes you have to take a deep breath and don't be afraid to be brave and ask for that. For whatever it is, whether it be that you want to achieve the next position in your career or some more flexible working or whatever it is, you don't know unless you actually ask. And so but you have to be brave to do that.
Yeah, that is so true. And asking what's the worst thing that can happen is people say no. I mean, so, fear of rejection, I get it. But so then you're in the same position you were before. Like it doesn't really change things. So, and consultative, Louise, I think is a great example, not only internally with the people that you're talking to, but like externally too, with everybody that you deal with. If you can do that in more of a open way, and consultative way, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to the third question. What are you most proud of, and how has it contributed to your growth as a professional? So let's go the other way. Louise, you want to start?
Probably the conferences. So for those of you who do know me, I've been running conferences since about 2010. So it's like 13 years or something. Gosh, I can't believe it's that long. Yeah. So my time at JobGate, we set up industry conferences, and it was my baby. And we built the conferences over that time. I exited at JobGate a couple of years ago, and so now we have the Job Boards Connect, and so we run those a couple of times a year. And the reason I'm proud of them, I think we put on a good conference, but the main reason is that we've created an opportunity to network, and I've built this huge network of fantastic people. And so I now feel in the industry that if I've got a question or a challenge or a problem, I've got people that I can go to and actually ask a question. Can you help me with this? What would you do in this situation? And so the conference is the proud thing, but the result of that is this community that we've built over the years, which you're very much a part of, everybody on this call. So yes, I'm very proud of that.
That's awesome. All right, and then Jeanette, you want to go?
This is a good question. I would say what I'm most proud of is about 10 or so years ago, I made the jump from HR practitioner to the tech vendor side as the first employee in the US for an existing company. And I built that out where we're almost half of the revenue of the global company, wasn't the only employee, like just doing that whole thing, really not knowing in many ways anything about, how do you build a business? How do you do it in the tech world? How does the playbook look in the US? How do you get, like all of it? And the fact that, I did it, made lots of mistakes on the way. Like, let's be clear, it's not easy, but I did that. And to me, that is just an incredible accomplishment as I look back over the past 10 years. So, and then taking the switch over and expanding out and doing it again. It's still making mistakes.
Yeah. That's really great. And just to add to what Louise and Jeanette just said, I think also being an entrepreneur, being a CEO of and owning a company, you really are always trying to learn new things. You need to have those networks, like Louise mentioned. You need to have those people you can go to, and also just know that you need to grow, because you need to figure out things constantly. So okay, so now Karina, how about you?
Sure. I think what I would have to say is I'm most proud about is the confidence that I have grown over the years. So I'm originally from Poland, but I grew up in the UK. I moved there when I was 14 years old. And at the beginning it was really difficult. There's some kind of stigma coming with being an immigrant away from your country, especially as a child. So I really, at the beginning, felt quite lost, didn't really know where I fit in the world. It's given me a lot of trouble when I was growing up. I really was lacking this confidence, but I managed to go to university there, move to Berlin, start my journey here. Start my business journey here as well. And I've been doing very well. I've been learning new skills, growing and developing, and I think this confidence that I have built up has really been helping me through my journey.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I hope other people can hear that and take that experience and try to make it their own as well.
I really hope so.
I'm sure a lot of people are in that similar situations. And then Natalia.
Wow, wonderful stories from everyone. And I would like to say that I'm trying this new approach where I'm finding something to be proud of in my everyday life. And now I understand that I have two most important things for me. And first of all, it's about having feedback from my clients, and positive feedback always makes me happy, understand that my impact has improved someone's performance or reached their goals. And the second one is my team and the team that we have in general at Jooble, because it helps to understand that you have this support system not only at home but also at your workplace, and know that there are people that are empowering you daily and they are working hard to make you grow as well. So it's super nice, and I'm really proud of that.
That's really great. Cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the gender issue in the workplace more directly. How has being a woman affected your career opportunities, and how have you overcome potential stereotypes or limitations? Natalia, would you like to start with this one?
Sure, yes. Well, I consider myself very lucky to say that throughout my professional journey, my gender hasn't really caused me that much distress. I believe that it must be due to the fact that, for instance, at Jooble, we have 50-50 ratio of female employees. I did my research, and it really shows that diversity at workplace is very important for everyone, and it makes everyone represented and felt heard. And but nevertheless, as many females globally, I face some stereotypes and unconscious biases that still persist in many cultures and societies. And for me, the rule is just to try to do my best and do whatever I want. And no one can tell me that I cannot do something. It's just stereotypes, and we have to move forward and do our best because we can.
That's great. That's great. Louise.
I've been really lucky in other than my horrible bank story after leaving the bank after 11 years and moving into digital recruitment. I've been really lucky because the 20 years that I've worked within the Aspire Media Group, this was JobServe, JobGate, there were more senior women than men in that environment. So I never saw I never felt like I couldn't reach a senior position within the organisation because I saw so many women. So that's fortunate, but I think that's unusual. Maybe not so much now. And Jeanette, we were talking earlier, and I know there are a lot of females in Jeanette's organisation now. But go back, years and years ago, there's a lot of companies that are very male dominated. So I'm very lucky, but I have seen it outside of my organisation in terms of, I started going to events, different conferences, congresses, and the first couple of years I was there, I was the only female in the room. And so that's quite intimidating. You walk in and it's, full of middle-aged men, typically, and I'm 5'1", I'm 5'0", and but my confidence is stronger than my height, taller than my height. So so I think it's very easy to be intimidated and to have your confidence knocked in those kind of circumstances. But I think kind of it's that scenario, inwardly you're kind of, they say the swan on the water, don't they? Your feet are paddling underneath and you're all elegant and lovely on top. So putting on a brave face, you might be feeling completely nervous and awful inside, but actually you can put on a strong persona and actually you find that you relax and you settle down. But the world is changing and there are more women in the room now, but still a majority of still a majority men to women ratio in the in a lot of the conferences that we go to still.
For sure. Yeah. How about you, Karina?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to hear from everyone that it's not been something that's affected their life majorly, and I have to say I've also been pretty lucky. Of course, there's some automatic biases that I'm encountering, on the way how I look or what I wear, how I speak. These kinds of comments do come along every now and again, but it's nothing that's ever stopped me developing within my career. It's more about, being shut down maybe in technical discussions, or even being very firm, or, I mentioned this confidence before. I've been told that maybe I'm too aggressive, or if I give my feedback, it's seen as more as nagging and not, giving productive, maybe slightly negative feedback. And yeah, when I do hear this negativity, I do have some self-doubt, and I question myself, maybe this is true. But I think, like Louise already mentioned, it's very important to just know yourself, know that these are not true. Be your own biggest advocate, be confident, and just try and do the right thing. I think it's also very important to educate others. There are a lot of conscious and unconscious biases that people have. And yeah, it's great to speak up, especially if something happens. Maybe it's a joke. I think it's still good to try and educate people and surround yourself with with allies who merit your work without looking into your gender. I also think I'm pretty lucky right now in my company. There's a lot of great people here, and I really do feel like I'm being merited on the work that I do. I never feel like anyone looks at me through a different lens, which is great. But I have experienced it before, and I think it's just about education and having this support network.
That's great. And Jeanette.
Yeah, another great question. So it's interesting. I think what we're hearing is that a lot of internally within our companies we're good, right? But it's more of this external, and that's certainly been my experience. So one story that comes to mind is a number of years ago, and I will not name names. I do a lot of briefings with industry analysts, telling them what we're doing. And there was one guy who was much older than me. And by the way, Louise, I'm 4'10", so I'm definitely a person like little, right? People are like, and every time I would meet with him, he would be like overly aggressive. It'd be like virtual, but just in a way that was like he would not speak to a male in my role or any role. Like it was so clear. So it was sort of like, well, what do I do here, right? I need to make sure this person has this information. They're like very influential in the tech world. So I started bringing. This is ridiculous that I did this, but I like brought someone who was junior to me, who was a guy, just who didn't even say so much, but just sat in on the meetings. It was like night and day.
Wow.
Like just so there's those little things that it's crazy, and this this is in the past few years that to have to do that, and there's been times where it's the same thing, right? There's these just stereotypes of of whatever. I just had, it was funny, last week at a conference, and I had people, oh, what do you do? And they're like, oh, you had a sale, yeah, you had a product. I'm like, no. Within like the practice I run, which is hourly and high volume, I'm like, I do it all. And they're like, oh no, so you're the head of, I'm like, of just that one. I'm like, no. And I've had to, you almost have to go back and explain, oh, that person you were with before, like, you report to him. I'm like, no, I'm more senior than him. So it's just these like stereotypes as a female, right? You just have to sort of correct in a way and then figure out how do you maneuver around it, which is sort of ridiculous in this day and age, but
yeah. No, that's great insight. So the last question in regard to this area is of your experience and your challenges is, so how has your professional journey shaped your perspective on gender diversity and inclusion in the workplace? There's always so much buzz about diversity and inclusion. And from a gender perspective, what are your thoughts on that? So let's start with Natalia.
Well, I would like to say that my professional journey has only proven to me why diversity and equality in the workplace is important, because when you have everyone represented, everyone feels better and everyone has the ability to grow. And I would like to also say that most of my team leaders throughout my career were female, and it never caused me any concerns, and it only proven to me that the female could be professional and confident women, and it's great to have these examples in our life.
That is awesome. And Jeanette.
What comes to mind here is we're talking about IT, especially when you're developing products and tech products. It is so important not to have everyone who's involved in that development of product being all men, right? Because we've heard all these stories of whatever, something's being developed and it just takes into account one perspective. Like that's where it's so important to have gender diversity, but also all different kinds of diversity of background, right? Like there's A number of years ago, I had a concussion. I couldn't like be on screens like for a long time. And then it started to occur to me, wait a second, when you're developing some tech products, right? Or you think about it, you need to take into, is this something that could be read, read out loud? Is there an accessibility standpoint, which, people think about, but you really got to think about, it's not what's your norm that you're going for. There's so many different types of perspective as users of your technology that just get overlooked if everyone who is working on that product is a guy, right? Or is the same guy.
Yeah.
It's just time and time again. And so for me, that I think is so critical. So we're putting stuff out into the marketplace to solve some sort of problem, to help people in whatever way we're doing it. Like, it has to be for everyone, or whatever market focus you're going after. But that market focus is not all male, right? And so you need to have some sort of, whether it's focus groups, if you don't have all your engineers that are all, if they're all male, then make sure you have extra people looking at that so you don't run into some of these problems. So that's my take on it.
That makes a lot of sense. Men and women's brains are definitely different. They just are, physiologically. So there's different perspectives for sure. Louise, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with Jeanette. I think you don't know what you don't know is kind of where I'm coming from. It's if you work in an environment with the same type of people all of the time, but you're developing products or services or whatever it is for a much broader part of society, you're never going to develop something or produce a product that is going to be, that's going to be considered diverse enough to make everybody happy. It's going to be a very narrow perspective on what you're building. And I've been fortunate that I've worked overseas as well. So I've been into Australia and to America and spent a lot of time. And it's only when you do that and you spend time with people that you think you speak the same language as, but actually you realize you're talking two different languages, even though you're maybe both speaking English. Culturally, people have different viewpoints, from gender point of view, it's different, so I think it is really important. And that's definitely what we look to do when we're producing content. We try and look at it from lots of different angles and make sure we have input from a broad range of people of different backgrounds, different genders. It is really, really important. And I think if you don't do that, you're going to have a very, very narrow viewpoint on what you're delivering to people.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that insight. And Karina, how about you?
Yes, I agree with everything that has been said. I think the diverse environment in the company is very important. Just to stay innovative, when you have a diverse team of people, you're really bringing the unique perspectives of everyone together, the fresh ideas that everyone has. And it means that the best and the brightest minds are working together, bringing their unique skills and viewpoints and driving innovation together. And finding creative solutions that in the end benefit our products.
That's awesome. Yeah. So thank you guys for this first section on experience and challenges. And I do have to give a shout out to Jooble. I think that's amazing that you have a 50% women, 50% men in your organization, in our industry. Kudos to you guys, and hopefully others will follow as well. I think that's great. So the next section is on personal insights and growth. I think this will help a lot of younger women earlier in their career especially, but at any point really, understand some of the ways that you guys have been successful and looked to grow. So first question, how do you manage the balance between career growth and personal life? This is a never-ending question. Louise, let's start with you.
Okay. It's not easy. So just to kind of give a bit of context, I have a daughter who's now 16, or turning 16, scary. But so most of my senior position of my career, I've had a young child to look after and make sure gets to daycare on time, and so you feel like you spend your life in a rush, dropping them off at daycare and getting back in time to collect them. That's without all the rest of the things that you have to do with your personal life as well. But I think my one piece of advice to anybody is, you can't look after your child and do all these extra hours and silly traveling, and it's just not, we all like to think we can have everything, but the reality is that you have to be disciplined with yourself. And so very early on, when my daughter was very young, I realized that I have to be super smart at work. I can't waste time doing things that I don't need to do. You just have to be more efficient. And I had to leave the office at 5:30 or whatever it was, because I've got to be at childcare by 6. So it kind of forces you being more efficient with your time. But not being afraid to do that, because as long as you're doing a good job and your time management has to be better, you have to be a bit more disciplined in not taking some of the meetings that perhaps you don't need to be at, making sure that you're delegating to people so that you're allowing them to do their job as well. So it should have a positive impact in the people around you. But you do have to be more disciplined with yourself, because you can't work 24 hours and I have a child. That's just one example. Work-life balance isn't just about, not everybody has children, and we all need to take care of ourselves. But from my experience, yes, being more disciplined and actually saying to yourself, no, it's you can't sit at your desk till 7 p.m. tonight. It's just not healthy for anybody. So
yeah, that's great. And Karina, how about you?
Yes, great question. This is something that actually I think a lot of people who know me know I really struggle with. I'm still kind of working on it. Yeah, right now I'm very committed to creating a successful team, and I want to always be there to support everyone, always be available. But of course, this is not a sustainable way of working. So I've been trying to kind of create just boundaries and priorities for myself. I think Louise mentioned this self-discipline. It is something that I just could not could not get around to. So I just decided to completely mute notifications from Slack on my phone, not check my emails at all after a certain time in the day. It is not even to open my laptop on the weekends, because it's just too tempting for me. I think it's just really important to prioritize, have your priorities, and in the end, it helps you to recharge, helps you to perform better in everyday life. Yeah.
That's great. Natalia, how about you?
Well, I also try hard to keep this work-life balance, and I would like to also add work-life war balance. And for me, it means that you always have to check your mental health and be sure that you take care of your well-being, have some me time. And also for me, the life has definitely changed since the war started, because now I try to relive every day fully. And it means for me to have as many hobbies as possible, doing something fun all the time. And I also have this rule that I have to take my best and fullest self to my work, but I also have to take her back with me home. So for me, it's feeling of this, to feel myself centered, rested enough, and like everything is in balance. It's very vital.
That's nice. I like the way you said that. That's very nice. And true. Jeanette, how about you?
Yeah. Well, similar to Louise, I'm a working mom, so I have a almost 13-year-old daughter who's like going on 25, and a 15-year-old son. And it's challenging, obviously, whether you have kids or not, having keeping that personal time for yourself. But I think specifically thinking about a working mom, in particular when my kids were younger, for me it was figuring out how I could do it all and have that career and be there as a mom in the way I wanted to be there and the way I defined it, right? Because everyone has it. And I live in a neighborhood where there's like tons of stay-at-home moms. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like I couldn't be there in a way for my kids the way they were, right? And then so for me, one of the things that I live close to where they go to school. So it was like almost no matter what, I'm going to walk my kids to school every day. Like that was something that was so important to me. And if I could do that every day and we would be there to get walking, like that was, I'm like, okay, I'm winning today, right? And so I think it's figuring out what works for you as a person whether you're a mom or not, like, again, carving out that time. I think I can tell you said that, like, carving out that time, living every day. And so that to me is, you know, been really key, and it will evolve, right? And I think, Louise, you said it, like, where, like, there, you have to be disciplined, like, almost one, especially when once you become a mother, a working mom. And I think there's this guilt, right? I don't have the time that I could before to dedicate to work. And even if I did, that's not healthy, right? Like, we need to take breaks. It's not healthy. And then vice versa, like, I can't do, and so there's this constant tension between, and there's some days where, like, you know what, work is going to win out. And then there's other days where my kids, or even me, like, and just taking time for myself, you know, I'm going to go work out, and I'm going to go on, you know, whatever, go for a jog, and then come back. And maybe that's during working hours, right? But what are working hours anymore, right? Because we have these roles where you're 24 hours. So it's just being almost embracing this discomfort of, like, there's this tension, but making sure to define for yourself. And I think that's key. It has to be for yourself, and it's different for everyone. So don't, like, think about, okay, that works for that, but that might not be right for you. So
Yeah.
And can I just add to that? If you don't do that, you end up in this position where you're going to have to make a decision. You know, so and you know, and of course, if you're a mother, you know, it's gonna be your children that are gonna come first. And so you can have your career, and you can be a good mother, but you have to have the discipline. And so Jeanette's absolutely right, and all of the comments are correct. You know, it has to, and everybody's looks different. You know, what was right for me may be very different for Jeanette. I definitely won't be going for a run during the day.
I don't do it all. That's not your thing, Louise. But I know. No, you guys. This is really great, and I think the key is that, fortunately or unfortunately, we all have to continue to grow in this way, and it changes all the time. But keeping, like, the mindfulness around it is super key to ensure you don't get to that point where you're overwhelmed and you have to make decisions like that. And I have the oldest kids, 3 of them, so they're all in their 20s now. But it was a lot to try and keep things balanced. And it was different, like you guys said, for me than it was for some other people in my choices along the way. All right, so moving on to the next question. How do you approach your learning and skill development to stay relevant? So this is about, how you keep up on those skills. Jeanette, do you want to go?
Yeah, so this is a good one, because in some ways there's so much information and content out there. And I don't know about you guys, but there's times where I feel like there's so much I want to listen to this podcast. I want to go on this webinar. I want to, and I almost at times will get overwhelmed because there's so much in different areas. And so for me, I find keeping up, again, if I'm thinking about specifically tech, right? Which is, think about even from like 2-3 years ago versus in the past 6 months, the change, it's being really focused. I feel like so much about life is about being focused, right? But focus on what you want. Focus on, what do I want? Okay, I'm going to listen to this podcast and read this article or whatever, this magazine or whatever, and, talk with someone, I don't know, every 2 weeks in different, what is it? So where you could be focused and disciplined on how you can keep up with what's going on. I think that's key, because if you sort of just sit back, there's so much coming into that. And it is overwhelming. And so picking and choosing has been incredibly helpful for me, and then trying to keep up with it. And look, it's not like, if there's some weeks where I, completely fail, and I'm like, oh my God, wait, I wanted to do that. So it's just almost taking that step back and be like, okay, no, these were the 3 things that I found most valuable. Let me keep reading and looking into them. And it could be something as basic as, for me, a lot, I love reading Harvard Business Review and MIT Review. And then there's a few other things out there again. So again, do you like reading? Do you like visually learn? Figuring out your learning styles as well, I think, is really key to how do you keep up. So that's what I got.
Yeah, that's great. Karina, how about you?
Yeah, kind of similar. So I really like to keep up with the newest developments via podcasts. I think on the way to work, I have quite a long commute, so it's a good chance for me to catch up with what's happening. Otherwise, I really keep an open communication with the people within the industry. We're talking a lot, asking what's happening about the newest products, maybe something I had missed. I find that very important, especially when attending events. I try to make sure I attend various sessions, speak to people about what they think, try to apply the learnings from there to my everyday work, but also for the planning. Yeah, in general, I also like having check-ins with myself. Just kind of wondering if am I feeling comfortable in my role? How is my workload? And then if I feel like there's more I can do, I like to take on trainings as well. I ask a lot about this additional trainings. Right now, I started learning more about SEA. Yeah, and it's something I'm very excited about to just develop myself in the marketing sector.
That's really smart to ask for training. Again, that's one of those if you don't ask, you don't get. So it's a really good point. And now, Louise and Natalia, both of you, right? Still?
Yeah, I mean, I think
And then Natalia.
to Jeanette's point, being selective about the narrative that you read is really important, because there is an overwhelming amount of information and you can't be an expert at everything. But you can, obviously you need to make sure that you're keeping on top of your own, the expertise that you have. But I've always been a big advocate for continuously improving yourself and what you do, and getting better at things, or stretching the boundaries and moving out of your comfort zone. So, where opportunities present themselves, actually, grasping that with two hands and actually trying something, even if you haven't done it before. Or, I talk about people speaking at the events because it's important. And, when we first started doing them, I'd never been on the stage before in my life. And so it's the most scary thing in the world when you first do something like that. You try it, you step out of your comfort zone, and you realize actually it's not as bad as you initially thought. So I think it's yes, making sure that you're being selective, maybe carving out time in your diary. Something I used to do was, make sure I've got a couple of hours during the week where I could say, right, I'm going to go and read this, what's going on in the industry, because that's all part of your job and being better at what you do. If you don't keep up to date with what's going on, then you will fall behind.
Oh, that's great. And Natalia, how about you?
Well, I would definitely agree with everything said before me. And I actually have the same approach as Karina has, very similar. And I would like to sum up just that you really need to have, you really need to stay up to date with everything happening in the market, but you cannot know everything, of course, but still it's very important as a professional and as well as for a company to stay up to date with all the trends, but also set some trends yourself. And I actually remember one saying that you told me, Face, when we were at Rigbas. You told me that in this industry, you should never burn bridges with anyone. And for me, it means that we should always remember the ultimate goals that we have, and it's to help users find jobs. And we should always be on the same page with each other and network, and know that one day we might have some projects together. So it's really great. And this industry is really enriching, and there is so much to learn here. So I really like this.
That's awesome. Great. All right, let's move on to the next question. And provide one example where mentorship or support from other women has played a role in your career. And let's start with Karina.
Sure. So truth be told, I've not had any women mentors per se, but I have been inspired by a lot of strong women in tech. I think it's also because of it's quite a male dominated environment. So that's why I've mostly only had experience with men. But yeah, like I said, I've been inspired by a lot of strong women. And one that has really played a big part in my journey, I would say, is my first ever team lead, who was a woman. She really listened to what I was interested in. She encouraged me to pursue my passions. When I wanted to get involved maybe in more tech developments, she always made sure to give me training. She would put me in charge of a project that I asked for. So she really taught me to approach also any task with as much data as possible. so that to avoid basically getting into any emotionally based argument or something subjective in there. The whole idea that she had was that data is your friend, and when your argument is based with with data, there's only so much pushback you can have, and it's something that I carry with me until today.
That's great. Louise, how about you?
Yeah, I actually work very closely with someone who's actually a very close friend of mine now, who was a really tough boss. But I learned so much from her. So I guess my advice to women out there is find somebody that is, don't choose somebody to be a mentor for you because you like them. You need someone who can tell you the hard truths as well, because the best way to learn is to get constructive feedback. If you can do things better, you want to know. And so the mentor I had, she was tough, and she would share information that was sometimes really hard to hear. Actually, I look back at that now and I think, okay, I learned so much during that period of time. And so she was a very strong, confident woman, and I looked up to her. But it was a tough time. But I also think if you can find someone within your organisation, that's great. But actually having someone outside of your organisation to speak to and have advice from is really, really valuable as well, because you get a completely different perspective. Someone who's not biased, they don't know what you're doing in your role, but they can look at it from a broader. So over the years, I've met people within the industry that again have become close friends of mine that have had different experiences, so that you can share and bounce off each other. So I do think that's really important. But do be careful, because not all women have your back,
Right.
and I have also experienced that if you're doing well and someone else is not doing quite so well as you, someone might throw you under the bus, or so for probably think of a better expression, but so it's a mentor is great, but you need to pick the right person that actually is not just going to say nice things to you. You need someone who is actually properly going to help you and sometimes give you a bit of tough love.
Yeah, that's really great advice, Louise. That's very true. And Natalia, how about you?
Well, I cannot define one specific example of mentorship, because for me it was and it remains the continuous process of support from my coworkers and my female coworkers, and knowing that there are these people that support me and empower me every day. And it really contributes a lot to have some leaders and set the examples of themselves for you, and to know that you have someone to look up to every day. So yes, I would say that this mentorship, it comes to me every day from everyone I'm working with, and also my female clients that I communicate with. So it's really nice.
That's awesome. And Jeanette, how about you?
I want to take the question and talk about support from other women. When I was building the business at my prior company in the US, started to, as I mentioned earlier, talked to a lot of different industry analysts and influencers in the HR tech world. And then, realized, okay, I need to be, out on social media, right? Like tweeting, putting things out there, and just, from a content standpoint. And I will never forget when I started doing that. It was literally, I want to say, almost all of the female women industry analysts and influencers that liked my tweet. I remember this, liked it, shared it, commented. And I was blown away by that. I was like, oh my God. There was none of the guys, and that's okay, right? But to me, it felt like it was this, oh my God, here's this thing that I discovered where here's women supporting women, right? There's not so many female, HR tech or just an IT, people out there doing this and, leadership or whatnot, right? There's not, right? It is so male dominated. And it was just, it was incredible. And I've never forgotten that. And to this day, it was incredible. So that to me, and obviously that had an impact, right? It just, because it helped get my message out there more so in the marketplace and helped, from a relationship and whatnot. But it was like, whoa, what's going on here? It was like one tweet. It was incredible. So that really made an impact. And I've thought about that myself as, how do I operate? How do I support other women? And we all need that, constant support and help. So, because a lot of guys just get that instantly, and we have to push for that more. We do. Still in 2023, we do, whether it's internal or external. So,
yeah, that's great. So this is the last question. We don't have a ton of time, so if you could keep your answers short, but it is an important question. Some of this came out already in the last one. But what advice would you give to young women aspiring to build successful careers in business? So let's start with Jeanette. We'll go backwards.
Oh, that's a good. Okay, I'm going to do two. One, I will say, don't let fear get in the way. Do not be afraid. I think, someone said this earlier, like, what's the worst that can happen? Just go for it. And then the other thing I will say, it is okay to brag. It is okay to brag about yourself, because no one else is doing it besides you. And look, the guys do it. They do it. They talk about their accomplishments. Like, brag about yourself. Brag about yourself. Don't let fear get in the way.
That's awesome. Louise, how about you?
Really the same things. I was going to say, be brave, and don't underestimate yourself.
Very good. That's great. And Natalia?
Wow, I wish someone told me this more when I was growing up. Well, I would say that you should always embrace your powers and never set any boundaries in front of yourself, because you are capable of anything.
That's awesome. And Karina?
Yeah, I would say always stay curious. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Keep learning, seeking feedback, and don't be afraid to try. I think a lot of people are scared of the what ifs, and I think the only failure is not trying. You really should give it a go, and if it doesn't work out, on to the next thing.
That's awesome. And the one thing I would say about what Jeanette said about being, what you said, be brave and brag about yourself. So the bragging piece, I think, is really important. Women tend to think that they're bragging when they talk about their accomplishments. But men don't think it's bragging. It is just, hey, this is my expertise. And so be out there and talk about that. That's okay. That's selling yourself is okay. It's actually good. And then you add value where you're selling it, So don't be afraid to do that.
Just to say, Faith, while you're just summing this up, and Jeanette said this as well, we talked about this earlier, it was almost like she was afraid to say, I'm the managing director of this business. I'm the same. People have asked me what I do. I would never tell them I was the CEO. I would always downvalue it. And so I am as guilty as the next, as all of us, for not bragging. And the man standing next to you would absolutely say, I'm the MD of this organization. And no one would think anything.
Yeah, we all need to take our own advice and constantly reinforce it, right?
It's absolutely. I absolutely. I totally agree. So this has been great. I wish we had a whole nother hour. I've learned some new stuff. I'm sure that our audience has. I just want to thank Jooble again for co-hosting this, for putting this together along with College Recruiter. Thank you, women, so much for your insights and sharing. I've seen some great comments along the way. It's clear that this is resonating with people, that people are learning. So I think it's great. And so on behalf of everybody, thank you so much. And I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Faith.
Thank you.
Bye.